Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this event today. This is an exciting announcement the President is going to make in just a moment. In the engine of an automobile, you have to combine air and gasoline to make things go. In Washington, the trick is to mix intelligence with courage, a combination in much shorter supply. That's why I'm so excited today, because the President is going to announce a unique and unprecedented partnership that does combine both elements. This has a goal with enormous implications for our future, the future of our country, and the future of our world. This initiative stems from these simple contradictions. The automobile, which has so enriched our lives, poses a threat to our well-being as well. The industry that has driven our prosperity now sees that prosperity faces threats in the future. In 1990, cars and light trucks in the United States consumed almost 100 billion gallons of gasoline and diesel fuel. That means we deplete a resource that cannot be resupplied, and we also pollute the atmosphere. About 30% of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions, for example, come from transportation. And we impoverish our country. Last year, the total U.S. trade deficit was $84 billion. Just coincidentally, what do you think we spent on imported petroleum and imported cars and auto parts? Exactly $84 billion. The problem isn't going away either. We have more drivers than ever. They're driving more miles. Highway miles driven in the United States doubled between 1950 and 1970, and then doubled again between 1970 and 1990. At the same time, the car has been one of the wonders of our civilization. We don't really need to point out that it makes it possible to visit friends in the next town and do everything from having vegetables on your plate a day after they've been picked to keeping in touch with your family. Americans have been having a love affair with the automobile probably at least since the invention of the self-starter in 1911. One of the inventors of the self-starter pointed out that it made it possible for women to get rid of the male companion, whose only use was to crank the engine and then get out for a drive and do it alone. People dream about cars from the time they are old enough to know what a car is. That's the meaning of these wonderful drawings that are around here. I don't know if you can see them, but I encourage you to look at some of the drawings that these kids have drawn. They're from the Capitol Children's Museum, and for the last couple of days, since they got an advance indication that something like this announcement was going to take place, these kids have been working on their idea of what the car of the future might look like. And they've questioned whether the internal combustion engine is the only way of converting energy to usable power on the road. They've got cars up there powered by water, air, solar power panels, the sun, wind, a recycle box, and my favorite, body heat. We want you all to look at that one closely. We want to be at least as imaginative. After all, considering that this country spends tens of billions of dollars each year to upgrade and improve bombers and fighters, it is amazing that we are content to use a technology on our highways that was developed in 1876. Today's announcement provides us with another way. It's an announcement of an initiative at once bold and necessary, risky, and yet full of promise. It is an announcement resulting from the work of many people in this administration, particularly from the Department of Commerce and from EPA and the Energy Department, the national laboratories, and ARPA and NIST and elsewhere. And after the President speaks, I'm going to acknowledge and comment a little bit about these three CEOs, but I do want to acknowledge Red Poling and Bob Eaton and Jack Smith, who will speak shortly, and also Owen Bieber, and of course the United Auto Workers have been full partners in the renaissance of the American automobile industry and are full partners at the beginning of this new stage. We'll then hear from an engineering student who I will introduce, but I want to acknowledge someone else who has been a real key to reaching this agreement today, and that is Dr. Jack Gibbons, who is the President's Science Advisor and head of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, who is on stage with us. And I want to acknowledge the members of Congress who are here. From Michigan, Senator Carl Levin is here, and I know Senator Regal was on his way, and also Congressman Dale Kildee and Sander Levin, Congressman Phil Sharp, chairman of the Energy Subcommittee in the House of Representatives, and Representative Fred Upton, and other distinguished guests who are present, including Secretary Pena, the Secretary of Transportation, and the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Carol Browner. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this announcement combines several of the main themes of President Bill Clinton's administration. From the days of the transition, President Clinton has talked about a new partnership between government and the automobile industry. And that's why it's a great pleasure to introduce the person best equipped in the whole world to talk about these themes, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to say a special good morning to the young people whose vision of the future can be seen on these great drawings they have done. I want to begin by, as the Vice President did, acknowledging the presence here of Mr. Eaton, Mr. Poling, Mr. Smith, Mr. Bieber, and also a lot of representatives of auto suppliers, people who supply component parts who will have a major role in this great project. I thank all of them for being here. The members of Congress, and I also want to acknowledge that we inadvertently omitted Senator Bryan from Nevada, a longtime leader in the struggle to increase fuel efficiency. I kind of like the Vice President's story about the self-starter. When I first met Al Gore, I thought he had one of those implanted in him at an early age. This is especially a happy moment for me. Some of you know that when I was a young man, when I was very young, my father was a Buick dealer in a small town in Arkansas where I was born, and he later went into business with my uncle in a larger town. I can still remember the first gainful work I think I ever did when I was 6 years old, was trying to help my dad restore some Henry J's that had burned in a fire 35 miles from our home, and as a favor to the dealer, he helped him restore the cars, and we got to keep one. So until I was 18 years old, I drove a 1952 Henry J self-made convertible. I once had an accident in it, and my jaw hit the steering wheel, and I broke the steering wheel in half. I don't know if that was an advertisement for my jaw or a condemnation of the steering wheel. One of my most prized possessions is a 1967 Mustang convertible that I restored a few years ago, and I think when I left my home, it was the thing that I most regretted leaving behind. The other people who drove on the roads in my home state, however, were immensely relieved. I think that all of us have our car crazy moments and have those stories. Today, we're going to try to give America a new car crazy chapter in her rich history, to launch a technological venture as ambitious as any our nation has ever attempted. General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, and your national government have agreed to accept a set of ambitious research and development goals for automobiles. We're confident that other companies outside Detroit will join in. Our long-term goal is to develop affordable, attractive cars that are up to 3 times more fuel efficient than today's cars, 3 times, and meet strict standards for urban air pollution, safety, performance, and comfort. Industry and government engineering teams will work together on this. The project will involve federal and industry funding. The government will pick up a greater share of the high-risk projects, One's identified by an auto industry government team. We'll have 3 types of research projects. First, advanced manufacturing techniques to lower production costs and get new products on the market fast. Second, research on technologies that can lead to near-term improvements in auto efficiency, safety, and emissions. And third, research that could lead to production prototypes of vehicles capable of up to 3 times greater fuel efficiency. Now, the Vice President mentioned that this brings together a number of things we are trying to do in this administration. First, there's a public-private partnership. Government can't do these things by itself, but there are a lot of things that we need to be working on that market forces alone can't do. So the third way, a partnership between the government and the private sector to avoid the inefficiencies, the bureaucracies, and the errors of government policy, but to add the technology and the investment expertise we can bring. I think this is the way we're going to solve a lot of problems in the future. We'd be foolish not to rely on the auto industry with its clear understanding of the practical problems, and this makes sure that neither government nor industry waste money on projects with no real future. The second thing we want to do is to keep America competitive. When you think of all the slogans you've heard over the years, what stands out is not just how catchy they are, but how much truth there is to them. In the new Chrysler form skillfully follows functions. Ford has better ideas, and there is a lot to admire if you've driven a Buick lately. We have got to do more of this. You know, one of the great untold stories, although it's beginning to get out, is that these people up here on this stage are regaining American market share. People are buying more American cars made in America because they're doing a good job. And since the auto industry is responsible for 1 out of every 7 jobs in the United States, it is clearly incumbent upon all of us to support this effort and to make sure it succeeds. What better way is there to work together on a car that's practical, affordable, fun to drive, places little or no burden on the environment? We want American cars at the head of this parade, not bringing up the rear. Believe me, there'll be a huge market for them. The third thing we want to do, this is very, very important to this administration, part of our commitment to reinventing government, is to get rid of wasteful and costly regulation. The government will in no way abdicate its responsibility in the search for near-term improvements in fuel efficiency, but we do want to break the wasteful gridlock in Washington over auto issues. We want a vehicle that lets us scrap a lot of the regulation in place today because it's achieved the objectives of the regulation in a much more efficient and market-based way. This agreement represents an important peace dividend. It makes the expertise of the Department of Energy's weapons labs, as well as the research facilities throughout the Department of Defense, available to industry. That means all those super strong, lightweight materials developed for weapon systems will be available here. I told someone today, right before we came out, I told the Vice President that I remember very vividly over 30 years ago standing in the showroom of the Buick dealership in my hometown and having my dad look at the new models and say, you know, someday they'll figure out a way to make a car that weighs less than half this much, and the fuel efficiency problems will be a long way toward being solved. Now we know we'll be able to do things with engines that we never dreamed over 30 years ago. Let me make one last point. This agreement grows out of a bedrock premise of this administration, one of the reasons that I ran for president. This agreement reflects an understanding that changes in this world are inevitable. They cannot be repealed, they cannot be rolled back, they cannot be denied, they can be avoided or delayed at our peril. What we have to do is to try to find a way to make these changes our friends. This is a visionary effort on behalf of the American people to make change our friend in one of the most important economic areas of American life. We do not have the choice to do nothing. We have to act decisively to shape change so that it matches the needs of the future. That's what we're trying to do with health care. That's what we're trying to do with economic policy. That's what we're trying to do here today. This is the end of a long negotiation and the beginning of a great period of action and excitement in American life. Is there any risk? You bet there is. We have to condition the American people to be willing to take more risks and fail in order to ultimately succeed. Will we have setbacks? I imagine we will if we do anything, but that's no reason to give up. Alexander Graham Bell once remarked that if he had known more about electricity, he never would have invented the telephone. We need a little more of that kind of ignorance today, to just keep walking into those solid walls until they give way. We cannot be deterred by the difficulty. For 50 years, the companies represented here today have comprised the basic engine of American prosperity. Working together, we can make sure the freedom and convenience of personal vehicles will continue to be available to all Americans. We intend to do nothing less than to define the world car of the next century, to propel the auto industry to the forefront of world automobile production, and to make this industry the source of imagination for young people of the future, for their ideas, their careers, and their efforts. I'm excited, but most importantly, maybe, our young people are excited. And let me just close with this story. I was greeting a number of ambassadors the other day, including an ambassador from one of the Baltic countries who has an American wife and a young son who's 5 years old who speaks fluent English and German because his father had been living in Germany. I never met a 5-year-old kid like this in my life, and when I shook hands with him, he said, "I'm glad to meet you, Mr. President. I want you to make a car that runs on electricity and doesn't pollute the air." And he said, "I intend to work on this, and I want you to tell the Vice President that I'm working on this." So I said, "Well, you tell him." I was so impressed, I went to get Al Gore, and I introduced him to this 5-year-old boy, and he said, "Hello, Mr. Vice President. I intend to spend my life working on this." And he said, "I am going to help you develop an electric car that has no pollution." And Al Gore says, "That means we're going to be partners." He said, "Yes, I guess so, but you don't understand. I'm going to spend my whole life on this." We owe it. We've got all these kids out there that are on fire about this. And I want to say again, maybe that's the most important thing in the world. We can keep them looking to the future with confidence. This country needs a good dose of old-fashioned confidence today that all of the challenges we face can be met and conquered. And this ought to be a clear signal to America that the core of the American industrial economy, the auto industry, is looking to the future with confidence, and that the United States government is going to be their partner in that successful march. Thank you very much.
Before introducing the three CEOs who have really made this possible, I want to ask all of the engineers present from the automobile industry if you would stand. If engineers from the automobile industry, we appreciate your presence here. Thank you very much. And these three over here I want to single out. They're the vice presidents for technology from Ford, John McTague, from General Motors, Arvin Muller, and from Chrysler, Francois Castagne. And may I ask the engineers from the federal government who are present, if you would stand, please, thank you. I want to acknowledge that the heads of all of our national laboratories are here. The head of ARPA, the head of NIST, the head of the Army's Tank Command, and others in the Military Research and Technology Establishment. Bill Perry, the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Dan Golden, the head of NASA, is here. The deans of several engineering schools are here, and a couple of other prominent faculty members from engineering schools, and we anticipate that the student bodies of several of these schools are going to be contributing some creativity and energy to this national effort. And I want to also acknowledge the person who is going to be the head of the interagency working team to keep this effort focused on the government side, and that is the Undersecretary of Commerce for Technology, Dr. Mary Good. If you would stand, Dr. Good, we're going to be counting on you very much. The three people who are most responsible for this are the CEOs of our three leading automobile companies in the United States. Harold Red Poling joined Ford in 1951 as a cost analyst in the Steel Division Controller's Office. He was named president in 1985 and elected chairman in March of 1990. Jack Smith joined General Motors 32 years ago at the Fisher Body Plant in Framingham, Massachusetts. Since then, he's had a variety of responsibilities, culminating in his election as CEO and president of General Motors 11 months ago. Bob Eaton graduated from the University of Kansas in 1963, joined General Motors in 1971, then moved to Chrysler, and was elected chairman and chief executive officer on January 1 of this year. I want to acknowledge all three of these individuals and ask them to say something, but I want you to know, everybody who's listening, that these three men made a decision as individuals, as leaders, and as a group of three that required tremendous courage and vision. This is not an ordinary kind of decision. They really have done something extraordinary. It is an act of patriotism. It is also an act of good business judgment, because the fastest growing market for automobiles is in those areas of the world that are having the toughest time dealing with pollution and dealing with the expense of the imported oil that fuels their vehicles. I think that by committing themselves to this project, these three CEOs have done a great thing for our country and our world, and also for their industry, because I think they are going to position this industry to have an excellent chance to dominate the world market for the new automobiles of the future. I'd like to ask them to come and speak now, and please join me in expressing thanks for what they have done. Mr. Poling, Mr. Smith, Mr. Eden. You want to go first, Jack?
Thank you, Vice President Gore, President Clinton. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of Ford, I'm pleased to join the President, the Vice President, Chrysler, and General Motors in making this important announcement. As significant as this undertaking is, I think what we're really talking about this morning is trust. Trust in our abilities to work together. Trust in our determination to make progress. And trust in our scientists and engineers. Enormous strides in cooperative research have taken place in the past several years. Government and industry, particularly in the auto manufacturers and their suppliers, some of whom are with us today, are now working together on issues where there are common interests and objectives. And it's being done without compromising our basic competitiveness in the marketplace. It wasn't always like that. Not too long ago, we regarded government as an adversary, and government felt the same way about us. Now we're starting to work jointly to find more ways to improve our nation's economy and our own competitiveness and meet national goals. This partnership will push the theoretical limits of energy efficiency, and there's no promise that the desired technologies will be found. But the opportunity for making this leap forward is unprecedented. In today's world, rapid development of technology is essential to meeting the challenges industry and our nation face.
Blame to sharing credit. Our industry must do its part to see that we do not miss this great opportunity to revolutionize our relationship with government. It will take the best efforts and resources of both industry and the government to make this happen. The difficulties and obstacles confronting this revolution should not be underestimated, and our expectations should be realistic. But the potential benefits for the environment and for safety, and especially for future generations of Americans, make this initiative exciting, important, and compelling. We salute the leadership of the President and the Vice President in bringing together industry and government for this most important initiative. And General Motors is very pleased to be involved in what promises to be a truly exciting partnership. Thank you very much.
process of talking about this over the last 6 months. They are truly extraordinary leaders and are performing a great service for our country. Ladies and gentlemen, our final speaker today is a student. We thought of future generations in putting together this whole initiative, and the young people of this country who are so excited about what the future holds are going to bring a lot of creativity and energy to the kind of work that is contemplated here. Jordan Wilkerson graduated from high school in Colorado. He saw active duty in the Air Force and is now a mechanical engineering student at the University of Maryland. He is also a co-project leader at his school on a project to come up with new ideas on cars of the future. His particular vehicle uses methanol and electric vehicle technology and modifies a GM Saturn SL2 for the Department of Energy's second annual HEV competition. He is an example of the young people who are dreaming about the progress we can make. And incidentally, Jordan, I see that tomorrow is your birthday. I hope you enjoy it half as much as we enjoy having you here today.
Mr. President, Vice President, thank you. I feel very greatly honored to have this opportunity, not to mention a little nervous, to say a few words at this important event. When I learned about this initiative, I can only say that I was truly excited about what it meant to me as a future engineer and for my generation in terms of the environment which we will soon inherit from all of you. Certainly any positive step that our nation takes toward a clean system is a good thing. But what has impressed me and excited me most is the boldness of this initiative, as well as the fact that our government and the automotive industry are working together to advance transportation technology. Speaking for my generation, I can only say thanks to the President and his team and to the auto industry for taking this incredible, important step towards environmentally clean and fuel-efficient cars. As a young engineer, I can say that you have all made this a very exciting time for me and my fellow students entering this field. And President Clinton, I'd like to close by giving you special thanks, not only for the clean cars which Americans will drive tomorrow, but also for the jobs that this initiative would create. That's very important to someone like me who's entering the career field. Thank you.
We're about ready to close, but before we do, this is an unscheduled moment in this. None of this would have happened if it hadn't been for the Vice President, and I think we ought to give him a big hand. He did a great job on it. Thank you very much. We're adjourned. Thank you.